What did we learn from the Texas A&M loss to South Carolina last Saturday? We're going to talk about it right here on this episode of the Locked On Aggies podcast.
You are Locked On Aggies, your daily podcast on the Texas A&M Aggies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Locked On Aggies podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Joey Ikes. Thanks so much for making Locked On Aggies your first listen. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast and on YouTube. So if you're listening to this on the audio side, go check us out over there, Locked On Aggies on YouTube as well. Today's show is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. I like to thank LinkedIn Jobs for being the official college football recruiting sponsor across the Locked On College Network. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions apply. I'm joined again today by my good buddy, Cameron Honesty, and we're going to talk about the Aggies' loss to South Carolina and the 5 takeaways that we had, the 5 things that we learned from that game, as miserable as it was. Cameron, the first thing, and this is based on an article, Cameron, that you wrote over at Aggies Wire, so please go check that out. The first thing that we learned is that A&M's 3-4. It's time for Connor Wigman to start for the rest of the season. Talk to me about that take. Where's it come from? What makes you think it's time for Connor Wigman, and what should we expect to see from Connor as we go throughout the rest of the season?
Yeah, so he, as we know, at the end of the game, Connor ended up coming in the fourth quarter after Haynes King had, I believe, pulled either something in his shoulder. A lot of people thought it was dislocated. I don't know if we got a confirmation on that or not, but to kind of preface, Haynes King obviously started the game, played pretty well, I would say, for the circumstances, especially with the O-line. He was getting pressured a lot, but he hung in there, took advantage of what the defense gave him, had a touchdown pass on that kind of very unique kind of run out of the pocket, basically almost off his knee, throw to Max right at the goal line where he kind of stretched in, and that was pretty exciting. And that was the most exciting moment we got with Haynes King throughout the night. But what happened throughout the game, and I think both you and I had the same type of opinion here, of that, every time Haynes is in the game, there's no improvement really from what we saw the week before. Now, there are minor ones. There are minor things in the pocket that we can't blame him a lot, like I said, because the O-line is not performing well at all. And so you can't put everything on the quarterback, but you can put things like holding the ball too long, not going out to your reading through your progressions in a very slow manner. And when pressure's in your face, not getting out of the way quick enough. And the most interesting part was when he went out with the injury, we were, I believe South Carolina was up 24-21. A&M was still squarely in this game. So we could say that, look, if Haynes had stayed in and he had the momentum at the quarterback position, that maybe they would have driven down the field and scored and taken a lead. I mean, that's up in the air. We have no idea. But when he went out with the injury, none of us were happy, because we thought, okay, we don't want, the freshman to come in right now, because it's that moment of the game where the defense is just going to feast on him because he's brand new. He hasn't played at all. And look, when he came in, let's be honest, it was pretty fascinating, because he looked very calm in the pocket. He was, not doing anything dynamic, but usually when you have a freshman that comes in a situation like that, you're going to give him a run play in the first and second down, and then a third down. Yeah, it's going to be like a short pass, getting to your outlet guy, thrown to a running back. But off the bat, he threw a strike to Donovan Green, and then he was throwing again the next down. I believe I don't know if he completed the next pass. I really can't remember. But there was just a zip to his throws. There was just a confidence to this kid, and you can see the talent there, and you can see why why Jimbo, after the game, before the game, said he trusts Connor 100% and that if he had to play right now, then he could play. So, I mean, we didn't learn anything about Haynes from that game, obviously, that we didn't know before, but we did learn a lot that Connor, and especially I've talked about the end of kind of garbage time when he was in there just throwing the ball relentlessly. He was making strikes and he was showing his arm talent and his athleticism out of the pocket. And that's all I needed. I think he went 8 for 17 with 91 yards. And that's all I needed to see that that A&M should start in the rest of the season. You're sitting at 3-4. You got some games coming up against Ole Miss this weekend in Kyle Field. You're on the road against Auburn, and then the rest of your games are home. Or I believe you're playing Florida after. Sorry about that. And I believe the rest, aside from Auburn, are home games. So you get to play in front of Kyle Field. You get to maybe do some things with Connor in the offense that you couldn't do with Haynes. And again, look, throw out everything. This season is a wash, and all you can do now is try to win as many games to get to bowl eligibility, and we have to move on. So I don't know if he's going to do that or not. I know he said early on Monday that Haynes is going to be available this week. I don't know what that really means. If he's not healthy, 100%, I wouldn't start him anyways. But he's got a choice to make, and look, he's the head coach, and he's going to make that choice. So we'll have to see.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, you think about the circumstances. You talked a little bit about the circumstances of when Connor came into the game. And so, he came into the game basically, a minute or so into the fourth quarter. And so it was 1st and 10, Haynes rolls out to the right, throws an incomplete pass, and comes out with a shoulder injury. And Connor Wegman, the true freshman, comes in one of the worst situations that you can walk into as an offensive play, as a quarterback, and that's 2nd down and 10, right? And so the thing about this game that was interesting is that outside of the start to the game, which really important, because it wound up being the difference in the game clearly. A&M was pretty clearly the better team on both sides of the ball in this game. Once it got for 55 minutes of this game, A&M was the best team or the better team on the field. Mm-hmm. And it was that way when either quarterback was in the game. But like you mentioned it a little bit, where the ball just looks different coming out of Connor Wigman's hand. And part of that is a statement about Haynes. And we've had that conversation before about his release and his timing and all that kind of stuff. And part of it is a statement about Connor. And we saw in that, you called it garbage time, in that time towards the end of the game where it felt like the game was over. But A&M needed to make a drive and go down and get points and then turn around, and they wound up getting the onside kick and having the chance to make the attempt to throw the ball into the end zone for a touchdown. But just the difference in the way he was able to and maybe it was the concepts that were called. Maybe there's a little bit less trust from Jimbo in Connor in terms of his ability to handle higher level quarterback stuff. So he sort of pressed some easy buttons, because we've seen coaches have a tendency to do that. And, we're both Dallas Cowboys fans. Also, I've been critical of the Cowboys in that Dak Prescott's an extremely good quarterback. Mm-hmm. And because of that, up until this year, and then even up through the game against the Buccaneers in week 1, they ask Dak to play quarterback on hard mode because he can. Yeah. And so you wonder if Jimbo feels a little bit of the same way with Haynes, where he makes him play quarterback on hard mode, even though he hasn't proven that he's capable of doing that at the high levels. But that's what Jimbo's ultimate realization of his offense is a quarterback that can play at that mental level. And if you think back to the best year that offense has really probably ever had, the most successful team that offense has ever been associated with, it was Jameis Winston, who, yes, Jameis is Jameis, but from a mental understanding of the game and the ability to work through progressions and make reads and understand the game, he came into the NFL at an extremely high level. So he was playing at that level at Florida State also. So basically, I think there may have been some easy button pushing for Connor to try to help ease him into the game. But especially on that last drive, and yes, we know defenses play differently in those last drive type situations. It worked pretty well in terms of being able to move the ball. There was a period, and I joked after his first drive on Twitter that he may never throw an incompletion at Texas A&M for those first two completions. And obviously that's one of those things that will obviously never come true. But it's just one of those funny things to tweet. Yeah. But he struggled a little bit in the next couple of drives, but then, like you said, he really, once they were down by 9 and A&M got the ball, he really started to settle in. Throws a 15-yard completion, then follows that up with a 24-yard completion, follows that up with an incomplete pass on a ball broken up, then a pass to Devon Achane for 17 yards. And by that point, they've moved, 55 yards in 4 plays and 3 completions. And like I said, yes, we understand what defenses are doing in those situations, but still, we've seen defenses play like that in the past and the ball not move that way. And so it was nice to be able to see that. And it will be interesting to see what he can do with the full game, not coming into the game, already behind in the fourth quarter, having to get a game-winning drive type comeback situation in the fourth quarter from the very moment he steps on the field in the middle of a series after a 1st and 10 incompletion, cold off the bench, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. No, the last point, you said that perfectly. And one of the reasons I think he was having so much success at the end of the game, and he was hitting, who was he hitting? He was hitting freshman receivers. He was hitting guys who he's been practicing with in the offseason for a long time. He's developed a good symmetry with these guys. And that's one of the biggest points I think even Jimbo Fisher is going to take away from this when he's been watching the film this week, is that this guy he has a good feel about him. And you're right. Give this guy a full game and he's going to maybe make some mistakes, starting out. And especially, let's say if he starts against Ole Miss this weekend, yes, I guarantee he's going to make some mistakes right off the bat. Ole Miss is a good team, and they're going to look at the freshman and go, well, we can disguise some things and mess him up. But once he gets warmed up, once he starts looking at the field and going, I can do this, and this is one of the most confident kids. That's all we talked about. He's talented, but he is confident, and he is, and you saw that at the end of the game, and that's what's so exciting about all this. So, again, he has a choice to make, but we'll have to see.
Absolutely. Before we move on to the next couple of points about what we learned against Ole Miss, or against South Carolina leading into Ole Miss, as we talk about Ole Miss, I got to tell you guys about LinkedIn. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. I'm so glad that we have LinkedIn Jobs on board with us here at Locked On, because as I've mentioned over and over on this show, LinkedIn has been pivotal in my career personally and helping me develop as a professional and have new opportunities. And knowing that on the candidate side, I also know how instrumental it is on the hiring side. And it's extremely easy. Just go to linkedin.com, create your free job posting, add your job and the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile, and spread the word that you're hiring. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. The next thing that we learned is that Texas A&M does not deserve Devon Achane. Devon Achane had 156 scrimmage yards on the night against South Carolina, 99 yards rushing, 57 yards receiving, had a rushing touchdown. He, we talked about it last week. He accounts for basically twice or a little more than twice the total scrimmage yards as anybody else in the A&M offense. And that doesn't even include what he does as a kick returner. And so, like you said in the article, and it's a perfectly worded statement, is that this A&M team, this A&M offense does not deserve Devon Achane at all.
Yeah, it's sad to see, to be honest with you, because it doesn't have to do with A&M, the school, the program specifically. It's just this team. It's just this team, and again, you're not calling out players because they're not managing this team, and it's just the fact that every Saturday, he comes out and he basically puts everything on the line. We just read the numbers out. 99 rushing, 57 receiving. He was everything offensively in that game. And yes, Evan Stewart stepped up, freshman wide receiver. Donovan Green stepped up. Max Wright stepped up. The receivers finally had one of their best games, I think, aside from the opener against Sam Houston State. But it just gets to the point where you're just, and using the term wasted, because we're not technically wasted. We're using him. Texas A&M is using him every game. They're relying on him to essentially win the game when the offense has the ball. And you just feel for the guy too, because he's putting everything on the line. He knows he has a future in this game. He knows that he's going to go to the NFL. He knows he's going to be a high pick, and he wants to put everything he can on film. But he also cares about winning. And that's the thing we don't ever talk about a lot about these guys, about these high-end athletes. Sometimes, especially some people, some members of the media just talk about how, they just come there and it's about the NFL. Just come here, put your stats up, and then leave. And then, the program was just a kind of middle point in your life where you just had to do it to move on to the real prize. And so this is not Achane. We know who he is, and this is a guy who specifically came back to do something special here. It's the same with Damani Richardson, who said the same thing. And reading some of his quotes from Monday as well, I think that's the same disappointment someone like Achane is feeling. These are leaders in the locker room. These are guys who have been a part of successful A&M teams, and now they're feeling the failure and feeling, sitting at 3-4. Don't really know where to look right now. You're kind of looking ahead, and you're looking at the games ahead and thinking, okay, we can win this one. Well, maybe we can win. Well, we can win all of them, but in reality, it's daunting. But yeah, that's the only way I could put it. I watched this guy. He's one of the best offensive weapons in the game. He can do even more than what he's doing. Let's remember to say that. We're not even seeing everything he has. And mainly it's the way that Jimbo uses him in the offense. Maybe he overuses him. Maybe he relies on him too much. But at the same time, we're going to see him even this weekend put on a great game. He's going against a Ole Miss defensive front that isn't the greatest. And, I guarantee he's going to put up big numbers. And I don't know if that's going to affect the outcome as much just because of how the rest of the offense is working and moving. So I don't know. But yeah, that's really all I could say about that. So
yeah, so I referenced a minute ago through 7 games, Devon Achane has 781 total scrimmage yards and 5 touchdowns. No other player for A&M has more than 389 scrimmage yards. That's Evan Stewart, who, yes, he did miss a game because of the suspension earlier in the year, but the other side of that is unbelievable is there's not another player on A&M's offense or on the team with more than 2 touchdowns other than Devon Achane, who has 5. So that just tells you just how difficult it has been for this A&M team to get into the end zone. And, we'll get a little bit more into that. Yeah. But first, thanks for making Locked On Aggies your first listen. For your second listen, go check out Locked On Sports Today. For the games that matter the most to the biggest stories in sports, go beyond the scoreboard and behind the scenes with local experts and insights only Locked On can provide. Locked On Sports Today, available on this app where you're listening to it now, YouTube, and wherever you get podcasts. Cameron, the next thing that we learned sort of goes in conjunction and almost runs opposite to the idea of how good Devon Achane is. And it speaks to how good Devon Achane is because this Texas A&M offensive line, it's broken right now.
Oh, God. Yep. God. I'm sorry. All right, let me compose myself for a minute. Yeah, yeah, that's true. I mean, that's when I was writing this; those went hand in hand because I'm just thinking back to not just the South Carolina game, but really every game aside from. Oh yeah, I can actually say even Sam Houston State they struggled. They've struggled in every game this season in 7 games, and um, that a lot of that has to do with now we're dealing with injuries, especially against South Carolina. Losing Bryce Foster and a key before the game was devastating. These are two of the more consistent offensive linemen in the interior. And what I learned the most is this, Joey, is that Matthew Wyckoff is not where they said he was in terms of progression. And the snap at the beginning of the game that hit Haynes King's knee, and actually I had to rewatch that. I mean, that stuff should not happen at all. And that stuff happening at the beginning of games, especially for a Jimbo Fisher coach team, is embarrassing beyond words, to be honest with you. And I mean, I don't know if we're going to see that again. All you can hope from that game of how poorly the entire offensive line outside of maybe Ruben Fowler, I guess he played okay. Cam Dewberry played okay for his first full start. I'd have to rewatch, but I think they played okay. But overall, the performance was poor. Haynes King had pressure in his face almost, it seemed, every play. I mean, there were only a couple clean pockets I can think of. And going back to Devon Achane, you are right. The fact that he has done that on the ground, through the air, and in total yardage with that offensive line, just imagine him running behind that 2020 offensive line. One of the better ones we've seen in A&M history. I think he already won. The Heisman would be secured, I think, already. Honestly. I'm not even kidding you. So, I mean, this is bad. And when I say broken, I don't think, we both know in sports, when you say something is broken, that's as bad as it gets. And that, I mean, really, that means it can't be fixed this season. It can only be slightly mended. And really, I don't know if we can really mend this one. I mean, Wyckoff is going to be back at center. Your right side is the only consistency you have. And to be honest, Layden Robinson has not played well this season. He has played way under how he was supposed to perform, because this was a guy who was a preseason All-American. A lot of the NFL mock drafts in the summer had him as a high second round pick, and he has not played up to that at all. And so, and look, I love Layden Robinson. He's a good dude. I believe he spoke to Texas A&M this week and basically blamed himself that he's not playing consistently enough. It's, he's supposed to be the leader on that offensive line. And look, you got to show it, man. You got to show it. You got 5 games left to show it. And if you don't show it, that's not only going to hurt your future, but it's just going to continue to hurt this offensive line. It's going to hurt the development with some of these guys, because and look, I'm happy Cam Dewberry's playing a lot. I want him to get these snaps. I want him to develop early, because this could be a guy that could end up starting right away next season. And I do like that. I'm sorry about that. I lost my train of thought. But that Ruben Fowler is playing as many snaps as he is in year 2. I believe he's going to be better in year 3. But everything that's gone wrong with the offense, you can't completely blame. You can't 100% blame it on the offensive line, but 70%, I would say, is going to be on the O-line, because I think someone made a comment the other day to me, asked me some questions, and he made a comment about Haynes King, and what would Haynes King actually look like in front of a good offensive line, right now, after working through some of the kinks. And I kind of thought to myself, I don't know, honestly, maybe a lot better, maybe a little better. You just don't know. And I mean, this is the thing that worries me every weekend that we have to focus on, because I find myself writing about how bad this O-line is every week. And I just don't know when it's going to get better. They have another game to prove that, and by they, I mean Steve Adazio, who does not look very good right now as the Aggies O-line coach, to fix what can be fixed. And if it's communication, if it's just simple, mismatches or issues where you can switch some things up. And, I don't know. It's disturbing, to say the least, to see their performance every week. And it just does not help this offense. moving the ball any quicker, any more efficiently than they can, because we can always hope every week that they do. But I mean, it always comes down to the offensive line.
Yes, absolutely. Right now, this offensive line, it stinks.
Yeah.
And something else that stinks is when you have embarrassing sweat problems. And let me tell you about Pamela. Pamela would hide in the office bathroom every 30 minutes to dry off her armpits so no one would see the wet circles around her arms. She finally has her life back because of Sweatblock. Pamela was able to fix her problem with Sweatblock. Sweatblock gives you the confidence to wear what you want without embarrassing underarm sweat. The Sweatblock wipes were featured and tested on the Rachel Ray Show by firefighters. If you or someone you love is experiencing embarrassing sweat or odor, try Sweatblock. Save 20% with promo code Locked On, 2 words, Locked On at sweatblock.com. It's also available on Amazon. Cameron, the last couple of points from your article, what did we learn from the A&M loss to South Carolina? We finally got to talk a little bit about the defense, and that this defense continues to shine despite a lot of adversity, both from an injury standpoint and otherwise, and including being put in some pretty rough positions by their offensive team.
Yeah, and that's the thing. When we're talking about A&M, and a lot of us have been smart to give them their kudos. I mean, they've been good. I'm going to say that they have been a good defense, and I think a lot of people are like kind of a novice football watcher kind of sees. They hear about how dominant a defense is, and they expect them to go out and literally shut down an offense completely and expect a shutout every game. That's not how that works at all. And the fact is that A&M's defense against South Carolina had maybe one really bad drive. It was at the end of the game when they needed a stop, and Marshawn Lloyd, their 5-star running back, that kid runs hard. I will say that. That's a good player. And but yeah, they couldn't stop him. And I think a lot of that has to do with attrition at the end of the game, where guys were beat up. They were on the field a lot, and especially A&M did control the ball, I think, for about 30 minutes in that game. So they shouldn't have had too much of a problem in that area. But really, that was the one kind of weakness in that game. But again, the way that they rotate guys, especially on the D line, McKinley Jackson had another good game. The linebacker core was very light that game. Obviously, Ezrin Cooper sat out, he was declared out before the game started. Andre White was back. He made a big impact. Chris Russell had another big game. But yeah, really the both, even the secondary, I think they had a pretty solid game overall. They held Spencer Rattler to a pretty bad throwing percentage overall, and I think it was under 120 yards or something like that. I mean, it's pretty low. I mean, they did their job, but yeah, I'm very confident that there's not going to be any drop off defensively aside from injuries, and obviously Antonio Johnson did dress for the game. I don't believe he played a lot. I didn't really see him out there. I did know he dressed, but I don't think I saw him much out there. But overall, defensive leaders stepped up again. Damani Richardson had a pretty good game, and look, every week we go into another game week. I never look back at the tape. I never rewatch the game and think, yeah, this defense is the problem. I'm very excited about the future of this defense. I think DJ Durkin's done a fantastic job overall this season. I just think that's an area where don't touch it. Just keep it the way it is. Keep rotating these young guys in, especially the freshmen who need as much playing time as possible. It's really cool to see someone like Jacoby Matthews, another very talented freshman safety for the future that actually recovered the ball on the onside kick. That's just another super talented guy that is playing a lot of snaps and is getting in there and getting his minutes. And that's good for keeping these guys for the future. So really, I'm not worried at all about the defense. I'm very excited to see them on Saturday. I think they're going to have another good game. But yeah, I mean, none of these losses can really be attributed to the defense. I can say that pretty clearly. So
yes, absolutely. I mean, we spent the first 30 minutes of this podcast talking about how atrocious this A&M offense is, And A&M outgained South Carolina by 112 yards in the game. South Carolina got only 13 first downs in the entire game. 8 of those were on third down conversions. They were 8 of 16 on third down, which is 50% is not great, but a lot of those were shorter distance third downs.
Yeah.
But they rushed for 118 yards. Spencer Rattler completed less than 50% of his passes, 12 of 25 for 168 total yards. So, like you said, an extremely well-rounded quality performance for the A&M defense against South Carolina. And as we move forward and zoom out a little bit from this South Carolina game, the last lesson that we learned is that with A&M at 3-4, they're now in a knockdown, drag-out fight just to get to bowl eligibility by the end of the year with a few tough games left on the schedule. And it's going to be interesting to see. I mean, it would be rough if A&M goes 2 years without a bowl game, last year because of COVID and this year because of not qualifying. And it would be really rough if A&M doesn't qualify for a bowl.
It'd be pretty detrimental because we have to look back at the history. I actually did that today. I usually memorize this stuff, and I honestly, I think I can do every record for the last 20 years if I used to be able to do that. But yeah, it'd be the first time, I think, a losing record in a season since, I believe, 2009. I think they went 6-7. I think that was the year that was a Gerard Johnson season. I can't remember, but I think the year before they went 4-8. That was kind of the start of Mike Sherman era, or kind of the middle. It was the start of the middle, but that's how long it's been. And so they, for everybody criticizing A&M and criticizing the program, they have not had a losing season in a very long time. So we can't criticize them for that, but you can criticize right now because of where Jimbo Fisher is in year 5. This was supposed to be, we're going to win 10 to 11 games, and then next year's our year to compete for a championship. But we're going to get very close this season. And when you have a year like this, where you literally are in a place where you couldn't even dream of being 3-4 right now, it wouldn't have been a nightmare preseason for this team based on just what the roster looked like. So yeah, it's very embarrassing, and it can hurt. These type of seasons can hurt programs. I don't think a lot of people think about that. They go, it's just a season, throw it away, start new next year. Well, no, it kind of leaves a stain in a way. And back to those years we were just talking about, the 2008, 2009, A&M couldn't recruit if they tried. They were not getting good athletes. A lot of guys didn't want to go there. They were getting, sub 3-star guys, a couple 4 stars here and there. They had to rebuild from the ground up, and Sherman had to kind of rebuild that team like an NFL team, like he did with the Packers years ago. That's why you ended up getting the 11-2 2012 team, which was built from Sherman. It worked like an NFL defense. You had a stout offensive line. That's one of the reasons that they had so much success that year. And that's kind of the same with the 2020 season. It's like Jimbo came here. He had, even at the start, I think he went 9-4, 8-4. And if you look back, pretty successful for a first-year head coach transitioning to a program. And obviously throughout, 4 losses here and there, the 2020 season, like we mentioned, 8-4 last season. That's, that it wasn't really acceptable, but it is what it is. We were going into this year. And again, you just did not fathom this at all. None of us did. No, you could ask any Aggie media member of anywhere, any outlet, any publication. They did not even think that they'd be sitting at 3-4. And looking ahead, we're all still previewing the Ole Miss game. And look, we're going to Ole Miss like we would really any game. Ole Miss is ranked 15th in the nation. They have their weaknesses like anybody else. They're not strong in every area. They're not a world beater. They're playing in Kyle Field with the team in Texas A&M that should be pissed. They should be going into this, mad as hell that, they've lost 3 in a row, all of them road games. And, it has been pretty, and they just want to go in front of their home crowd. And Damani Richardson said on Monday, he loves the 12th man like no other. The fact that these kids were camped out around Kyle Field for a 3-4 team. I mean, we have to remember that this is a 3-4 team. This is not a winning team right now, but they are going to pack Kyle Field yet again. And you got to do it for this fan base. You got to show up. You got to give your best effort. But yeah, really, it's Ole Miss. It's Florida. It's on the road at Auburn. It's a UMass game that you should blow them out of the doorway. I mean, blow them out of Kyle Field. And then you face an LSU team, which looks very good right now. So it's daunting. Like I said earlier, it's a daunting schedule, but there are games to be won on that schedule. But it just depends what A&M team is going to show up. That's what we have to ask every Saturday now. So and we can talk about injuries, we can talk about this and that, but it all comes down to what type of effort are they going to give, and is Jimbo finally just going to kind of throw out the old game plan and say, we need to do something new because we need to win some games.
Yep, absolutely. Guys, that's going to be our show for today. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm your host, Joey Ikes. You can find me on Twitter at Joey Ikes. You can find Cameron on Twitter at Cameron Honesty. That last name is OHNYSTY. You can find both of our work at aggieswire.usatoday.com. You can find Locked On Aggies on Twitter at Locked On Aggies. Please go check out our YouTube channel if you're listening to us on the audio side. Subscribe there. Leave us a comment in the bottom of the video. Tell us what you learned from the game against South Carolina, what your main takeaways were. If you've got something else outside of the 5, or if you've got one of the 5, tell us what your favorite one was. Now that you've made Locked On Aggies your first listen of the day, for your next listen, make sure you go check out Locked On Sports Today, the biggest stories of the day, plus instant reactions, big game recaps, and the take of the day. Available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcast. Thanks so much, guys. We will see you tomorrow.